There is a particular kind of unfairness that never quite heals. Being punished for something that was done to you. You know the shape of it. A woman is assaulted, and the first question the world asks is what she was wearing. Someone is knocked down by circumstances they never chose, and then blamed for not getting up fast enough. The victim is handed the bill for the crime. We like to think we have grown out of this, that it belongs to some darker, older world. It does not. More than 130 years ago, a quiet, furious English novelist looked hard at exactly this cruelty and wrote a book so scandalous that outraged reviewers attacked it as coarse and immoral. It is about a poor country girl, gentle, hard-working, guilty of nothing, who is wronged by a rich man, abandoned by the good man she loves, and finally destroyed by a society that decides she, and not the men around her, is the one who is impure. Her name is Tess, and the most radical thing the author did was to put a single defiant phrase on the title page, calling her, against the whole weight of Victorian morality, a pure woman. This is Thomas Hardy's Tess of the Urbervilles, in about 20 minutes. The story of a victim the world insisted on treating as a sinner, and why it still reads like this morning's news. The book is Tess of the Urbervilles, published in 1891 by Thomas Hardy, an English novelist and poet writing in the last decades of Queen Victoria's reign. Hardy set almost all his fiction in Wessex, a half-invented, half-real stretch of rural southwest England, Dorset and its neighbours, a world of dairy farms, harvest fields, country lanes, and ancient stone circles that was, even as he wrote, being swept away by machines and railways and modern life. He knew that world was dying, and he loved and mourned it on every page. But Hardy was also, at heart, a man at war with the respectable morality of his time, and Tess was his most direct assault on it. When it first appeared, the book caused a scandal. Hardy had to cut and soften scenes just to get it published in a magazine. Reviewers were outraged, not because the writing was poor, for it is some of the most beautiful in English, but because of that subtitle, A Pure Woman Faithfully Presented. To call Tess pure after everything that happens to her was to accuse an entire society of hypocrisy, and readers knew it. Hardy believed we are small creatures at the mercy of vast, indifferent forces. Fate, chance, biology, the blind machinery of the universe, and that on top of that cruelty we pile a second, man-made one, our own merciless moral judgments. Tess survives because that double injustice never went away. Every time a survivor is doubted, shamed, or told she brought it on herself, Hardy's furious, tender book is describing us. Here is the whole novel in one sentence. A poor, good-hearted girl is wronged by one man, betrayed by another, and slowly crushed to death by a world that punishes the victim instead of the men who harmed her. That is the shape of it, not a romance, though there is love in it, but a tragedy about blame. Hardy's real subject is the gap between what Tess actually is, kind, honest, more sinned against than sinning, and what the world decides she is, fallen, ruined, impure. The engine of the book is not fate alone, but the cruelty of a double standard, the way the same act can leave a man untouched and a woman destroyed. And Hardy wants you to feel every turn of the screw. We will walk it in 5 beats. First, the blighted star, the poverty and false pride that pushed Tess out into a world she is far too young to survive. Second, the ruin in the chase, the assault that marks her, and the way the shame is loaded entirely onto her. Third, new life at the dairy, a green season of hope where she falls truly in love and dares to believe the past is behind her. Fourth, the confession, the wedding night where the man she loves forgives his own sins in a breath and cannot forgive hers. And fifth, the woman pays, the long descent to a final desperate act and the cold verdict of a world that called it justice. Keep your eye on how gentle Tess is through all of it. That gentleness is the whole point. First, the blighted star. Tess Urbervilles is the eldest child of a poor, feckless family in a small Wessex village. Her father is a drinker with more pride than sense, and one day a passing parson tells him that the Urbervilles are the last, decayed remnant of a once noble family, the Urbervilles. That single scrap of vanity sets the whole tragedy in motion. Drunk on the idea of lost grandeur, the parents hatch a plan to send their beautiful teenage daughter to claim kinship with a wealthy family nearby who bear the Urberville name, a family who, in truth, simply bought it. Tess does not want to go. She goes because she feels she must, because her family is sinking and she is the one asked to save it. Hardy frames her fate from the start in the words of her little brother, Abraham, gazing up at the night sky and asking whether the world they live on is a good one or a spoiled one. "'Tis because we be on a blighted star and not a sound one, isn't it, Tess? A blighted star, a world already gone wrong before you were born to it. And before Tess even leaves, that world takes its first payment. The family's only horse, their one means of livelihood, is killed in an accident on a dark road while Tess is driving, and the guilt of it pushes her toward the Urbervilles after all. Here is the modern mirror, the child who becomes the family's rescue plan, sent out too soon to fix problems she never made, carrying a guilt that was never hers. Tess is punished before she has done a single thing. That is where Hardy begins. Second, the ruin in the chase. At the Urberville estate, Tess meets Alec, not a real Urberville at all, but the idle, predatory son of the family that bought the name. He is instantly fixated on her. He gives her a job, presses attention she does not want, and waits. Then one night, lost with him in the dark woods called the Chase, exhausted and defenseless, Tess is assaulted. Hardy, forced by his censorious age, draws a veil over the exact moment. But he leaves no doubt that Tess did not choose it and did not understand what was coming. Later, when Alec dares to suggest she consented, her answer is one of the saddest lines in the book. "I didn't understand your meaning till it was too late." She returns home pregnant, bears a child, and watches it sicken and die in infancy. And all the while the village whispers, and the shame settles onto her shoulders alone. Not onto Alec, who walks away untouched. Onto Tess. Hardy is icy about the injustice of it, that on this gentle girl, blank as fresh snow, such a coarse fate should be traced, while the man who traced it pays nothing at all. Here is the modern mirror, and it is painfully familiar. The survivor who is interrogated instead of comforted. The question, what did you do to lead him on? The way a community will protect a charming man and quietly brand the girl he harmed. The wound was done to Tess. The blame, the world decides, belongs to Tess. And the line to carry is simple and terrible. She was not ruined, she was wronged. And those are not the same thing at all. Third, new life at the dairy. Years pass, and Tess, still young, walks away to start again where no one knows her, taking work as a milkmaid at Talbot Hayes, a lush and kindly dairy farm in a green river valley. This is the warmest stretch of the book. Sunlit mornings, the smell of the meadows, the slow rhythm of the cows. And here, for a while, Tess is allowed to be happy. She meets Angel Clare, a thoughtful, idealistic young man learning farming, a parson's son who has turned his back on the church to think for himself. They fall deeply, genuinely in love. But even in her happiness, Tess carries the old ache of a world that seems to reward the wrong people and punish the innocent. Drawn to Angel's learning, she confesses what she most wishes she could understand. I shouldn't mind learning why the sun do shine on the just and the unjust alike. It is the question at the heart of the whole novel, why the innocent suffer and the guilty go free. Angel courts her, and Tess, terrified, tries again and again to tell him about her past. She even writes it in a letter that slips under a carpet and is never read. She lets herself be swept toward marriage, half believing she has finally outrun the blighted star. Here is the modern mirror, the fresh start in a new city, the new love, and the secret you cannot decide whether to tell. The fear that the truth of what was done to you will cost you the one good thing you have found. And the line to carry: hope is real, but a love built on a silence you were shamed into is standing on cracked ground. Fourth, the confession. They marry, and on their wedding night, in the firelight, Angel makes a confession of his own. That once, in London, he had a brief, reckless affair. Tess is flooded with relief and joy because now she can tell her own truth and be met with the same mercy. She forgives him in an instant. Then she tells him, quietly, about Alec and the chase and the child who died. The same sin, two different verdicts. Because Angel, gentle, modern, free-thinking Angel, cannot do it. The man who was forgiven a breath ago turns to stone. It is the cruelest scene in the book, and it turns on a single unbearable idea. In the name of her love, she begs him to forgive her as she has just forgiven him, and he answers that forgiveness is not the point, that the woman he loved is not the woman standing before him. You were one person, now you are another, he tells her. Never mind that his sin and hers are, if anything, the reverse of equal, that he chose his and hers was forced upon her. The double standard does not care. He forgives himself and condemns her for the very thing he was pardoned. Then he leaves her and sails for Brazil. Here is the modern mirror, the partner who holds you to a standard he would never survive himself. The way we still, quietly, ask a woman's past to be spotless and a man's to be forgiven. Tess did nothing on that wedding night but tell the truth and offer grace. For that honesty she is abandoned. And the line to carry: watch closely who is allowed to be forgiven and who is not. Fifth, the woman pays. Alone and penniless, Tess sinks into the hardest life the book has shown yet. Brutal winter labor at a bleak upland farm, flint comb ash, grinding herself down to keep her family from starving. And then, out of the past, Alec returns. Now, absurdly, reborn as a traveling preacher, though he abandons his new faith the moment he sees her again. He hunts her relentlessly, pressing on her poverty, her hungry brothers and sisters, her missing husband. When he corners her, Tess flings the truth of what he is in his face. Once victim, always victim, that's the law. She sees clearly that the world has fixed her role and will not let her out of it. Worn down at last, believing Angel is gone forever, She goes back to Alec to save her family, and it destroys her. Because then Angel does come home, chastened, having realized across an ocean how monstrously he judged her. Tess, seeing the ruin of everything, in a moment of anguish, kills Alec and runs to Angel. They have a few stolen days of happiness before the police close in, and Hardy stages the ending at Stonehenge, where Tess lies down on the ancient altar stone at dawn and waits, saying only that she is ready as they come to arrest her. She is hanged, and Hardy delivers the coldest sentence in Victorian fiction. The president of the Immortals, in Aeschylean phrase, had ended his sport with Tess. The gods, if there are any, were merely playing with her. Here is the modern mirror, the way the already wounded get pushed down again and again until a breaking point, and then are judged only for the breaking. And the line to carry. They called it justice. It was nothing of the kind. So what does all of it add up to? On the surface, Tess of the Urbervilles is a tragic country romance. A beautiful milkmaid, two men, a doomed love among the dairies and harvest fields of a vanishing rural England. But underneath the lyrical landscape, Hardy has built a controlled, deliberate indictment, and every beat is a hammer blow in the same argument. A poor girl is pushed out into the world by others' pride and poverty. A rich man wrongs her, and the shame is loaded onto her, not him. She claws her way to a new life and a true love, only to have that love collapse the instant she is honest. The one man she trusts forgives himself and condemns her for less. And when the wreckage of all that finally drives her to a desperate act, the world hangs her and calls the account settled. Put it together and you get Hardy's real subject. Not fate alone, but the way human beings add cruelty to cruelty. How a society invents a merciless moral code and then applies it only to the powerless. The genius and the fury of the book is in that defiant subtitle. By calling Tess a pure woman, Hardy is not describing her body, he is describing her heart, her honesty, her tenderness, her refusal to become hard, and daring you to disagree. She is more sinned against than sinning from the first page to the last. And more than a century later, the book endures because the machine that broke Tess is still, in quieter forms, running. Here is the one thing to carry out of this book and into your week. Notice where you aim the blame. When you hear a story of someone harmed, a story of assault, of ruin, of a life that came apart, notice the reflex, so old and so automatic that we barely feel it, to look for what the victim did wrong. She was careless. She should have known. She must have, somehow, brought it on herself. That reflex is the exact machinery that killed Tess, and it lives in all of us. Hardy's whole book is a plea to switch it off, to extend to the wronged the plain mercy that the world reserves for the powerful. So this week, when the story reaches you, try holding the harder, kinder question instead. Not what did she do, but what was done to her. And turn that same mercy inward. Most of us carry some private version of Tess, some old wound we were somehow taught to be ashamed of, as though the hurt had been our fault. Angel forgave himself easily and could not forgive her, and it destroyed them both. Try to be gentler than Angel, with others and with the version of yourself you have quietly been blaming for something that was done to you. Purity, Hardy insists, is not an unbroken record. It is the heart you keep through what breaks you. That is the whole inheritance, and it costs nothing to begin using it the next time you catch yourself about to judge. Thomas Hardy poured his fiercest tenderness into this one country girl, and then let the world do its worst to her. Not to wallow in her suffering, but to force us to see the injustice we had stopped noticing. He gave us the blighted star and the ruin in The Chase, the green happiness of the dairy and the frozen cruelty of the confession, and asked us to hold one stubborn idea against the whole weight of respectable opinion, that Tess, wronged and abandoned and hanged, was pure all along. If this walk through Tess of the Urbervilles gave you something worth keeping, subscribe. A new classic every week, faithfully, in about 20 minutes. Next time, we cross to 19th century Russia and the towering final novel of Fyodor Dostoevsky, The Brothers Karamazov, a story of 3 brothers, one murdered father, and the deepest question a human being can ask. If there is no one keeping score, is everything permitted? And tell me in the comments, was there a moment in Tess's story where you caught yourself, even for a second, wanting to blame her? And what does that reflex tell you about the world she was trying to survive? I read every reply.